All right, welcome to this guide where we are going to try and find out how we can improve page speed or page load speeds by looking into images, specifically their size and how they're being loaded, right? So I'm going to show you that and also how we can communicate this to developers or how you might be able to fix it yourself, or at least talking about it. Now, why does this matter? Well, um, there's something called Core Web Vitals. So Google is trying to measure how fast your page loads and then uses that as a ranking signal. Also, just specifically user satisfaction as a ranking signal is also a concept. So here, if a page loads really slowly and your competitor loads really fast, why would Google serve the slow version when they're pretty much similar, right? So those are the questions that Google has been asking, and those are great questions. Another thing is if you improve your page speed, usually you improve user satisfaction, increased conversion rates. So you have this twofold, actually trifold, because Google Ad Score also looks at this, Core Web Vitals and other things, and you might have lower placements in your Google Ads bidding, or it might be cheaper to have a placement if you have good Google Ad Score. Sorry, so it's kind of a trifolded area here where we can improve rankings, conversion rates, and Google Ad placements or pricing, or at least the ad score. So these are quite important to look into. And one of the quick wins I always look into first is images. The websites are image heavy, and they're usually the first thing you can look into. It's quite easy to fix and communicate. Great. So now we know why. So how do we look into if there is an issue, and how do we communicate it? So I'm using my own website here as an example. It's just a watch blog. I've got, it's very image heavy as well. Now, I'm not doing the best job I could here with optimizing images or what is being loaded, but that is good, proves my point here. So how do we start looking into this? I'm using Google Chrome as a browser. That's what you should be doing. And what we want to do is right click and then inspect. And this opens the Chrome Dev Tool, tool set here. Let's just split screen this. There we go. So we want to go into the tab up here. You can see there's a few tabs. We want to go into network. And you can see right now it's empty. That's because I need to refresh the page in order to showcase a network timeline and everything that's being loaded over the network. So you can see here, you can even reload the page directly from here. But before we do that, a few things to check. You can see here there's a few, you can select, for example, doc, CSS, JavaScript, font. So these are the different files being loaded over the network. In our case, we just want images. So that's what I'm going to stick with. You might choose media or something else, but image, that just makes it easier. Then we just see the images. The other thing you want to check here is disable cache. So I've been visiting this website. This is mine. So I probably have some of the images cached already. In most cases, websites do cache images. I know I'm doing a little bit. We want to disable that because we kind of want to simulate a first user coming in who doesn't have any images stored in his local cache. And then finally, we can throttle the network, but that doesn't really change this file size. It just changes how fast things are moving. So I'm going to remove the throttling because I'm not really trying to diagnostic, how fast this would load on a busy or slow 4G. I just want to see the image size. So no throttling for me. Great. Now we can refresh the page. And we can see all the images here. And this is what's being loaded in this viewport. And I'll show you what that means. But first of all, here you can see it says size. And I just like to press, let's just filter. You can see there's a memory cache. So there's something going on here. These are the little flags. Oh, there we go. So size. And then now I can see the biggest ones and the smallest images. When I said viewport here, what I mean is right now, the browser knows I'm only seeing this part of the website. But if I scroll down, there is something called lazy loading, which loads your images when you scroll down. That makes it so that you don't have to load everything on the initial view here of the page. So the way you can test that really quickly is just scroll down and see if more images are being added to the network here. Oh, and we can see, yep, they're being added slowly here. So I think what's happening again is that we have lazy loading. Otherwise, so basically it's loading these images when they become useful for the user, which is smart. There's other ways to go get around that. For example, you could load them all, but just load the bottom images at last. But again, not really necessary to do here. So yeah, lazy loading is something I know I've activated on this page. But so the way Google calculates page speed is just taking Core Web Vitals and it does a lighthouse test on users actually using this. website. And usually, well, you can scroll down, but usually the initial page load is just the viewport here. So I'm going to just stick with that and not scroll, right? Because this is how fast does, when I click on the URL until I see all the important images, text, menus, when that is loaded, I get like an LCP point. It marks it into timeline, and we want to reduce that. And we want to reduce that looking at the images here. That's what we're trying to do. So, so we can already see I've got an image here, and I can double click on these and open them. So I can actually see what's going on. So we see we got this image here, and it is 100 kilobytes. So I could probably get that down to 80, 70. The reason I've chosen to keep them this high is because I think quality of the image is more important. We're looking at a watch up close. We want details. So I could probably lower this, but one thing to note here is let's say we want to reduce this. Maybe it's not as important. Maybe these are just graphics and we don't need them to be this crisp. Well, the first thing I would tell a developer is, well, we are using JPEG. We could be using WebP, which is another format that probably can keep the same quality and lower the amount of kilobytes that are being transferred over the network. So one thing is to just change file format, and you can actually do that like site-wide, like say I want all images, or here are these images, and he could probably run a script or something that just replaces that. We keep the same URL of the image, but let's just change the format, boom, and then rethrow them into the same placement. That could be something. Sometimes you just activate like an actual image transformer in the backend that does this. So sometimes I've been in meetings where I told them this, and they pretty much just clicked on a button and all images were like half the size. So you can definitely optimize for that. The other thing you might want to look at is how big is this image versus what is being rendered. So in my case, I know the biggest images, I export them 1,000 pixels wide, but I know my content area here. I know my content area is approximately 800 or 900 pixels. So the real question is, if I inspect this, again, you can see this is the HTML, and we can see this is specifically 760 pixels wide. So how big the maximum size here is usually not going to be much more than that. So okay, 760. So what's happening here is my images only really need to be 760 pixels wide. On mobile, there's a lot more pixels. But again, do we see the difference with the eyes? You might want to double that. There's a few, I don't want to get too complicated, but what I've seen is sometimes I see on product pages, so like a category page with a lot of products, those little tiny product images, they're actually being sent over as 2,000 pixels wide, but we're only showing this much. So we don't really need to send that many pixels or information over the network. We really only need these tiny pixels, right? Because that's all we really need to see. So in our case here, I could probably get this size down to 800 pixels instead of 1,000. That would save me a little bit of kilobytes. This is not really relevant for my website, but in this case, like if it's a category page and you have, 30 products per page, and they're all 2,000 pixels, well, then create those images. Make sure they're either changed in pixel size and in format sometimes. So when we optimize images, it's usually either pixel size, how many pixels the image is, or the format and quality. And the format could be WebP, JPEG. I think WebP is one of the better ones right now. JPEG can work as well in many cases. And then you've got the pixel size. So those are the two things you kind of want to try and communicate. And I've shown you how you can test them. Now, if we go back to network, there's another thing I want to talk about here, which is specific to my site. Could happen on other sites. This first image is actually I know it's part of the menu. So my menu has images here. You can see that was the image here. So the first thing which is important to note is this is a tiny little image, but look how big it is. It's 300 kilobytes. That's too much. So this is really, really, and you can see the image says 5 times. So the image apparently is supposed to be very small in pixels, but it's still such a high size or big size, and that's a problem. So another thing I would talk to if I had a developer on this website is say, well, these images in the menu, why do they have to be this big? And that's because I've uploaded them this big, but why they're being transferred over the network. They don't have to. Let's make or create a piece of code that creates a smaller versions just for the menu, because this menu is being rendered on all pages of my website. So it's affecting all the pages of my website. So menu items like this affects the page load of all my pages. So it's important to look into. Let's see if we can find some other ones. Yeah, this is also from the menu, but it's slightly smaller. And again, it says image and then it gives me a size here. I believe that's the size actually, but it's still way too high. So for some reason, we just have this super high kilobyte size. Another thing here is if I choose the menu and I refresh this page, I still get, let's see here, I still get those menu images and it's still 300 kilobytes. But on mobile, I don't even see on the menu, I don't even see these. I don't have images on my menu. So again, if we had developers, I would probably tell them, hey, on mobile, since we don't have any images in the menu, let's not even transfer them. In this case, they're being transferred to the network and then we're just hiding them. Let's never transfer them on mobile, only transfer them when the with port here allows it or the device allows it to be seen like this, right? That's the only, and then again, once we do transfer them, why is this so big? I've uploaded a PNG, which is also a bad idea. That's a bad format, usually, unless you want transparency or small logos. So yeah, if it's PNG and it's just an image like this, make sure go to JPEG or WebP. But here, again, the important lesson here is that we're transferring 300 kilobytes across the network for a tiny little image. It doesn't have to be this big. In this case, it's just the theme in WordPress that doesn't have any automatic way of creating smaller versions of a picture to upload it for the menu. I think it just takes the actual image that I uploaded, which is big, and then just scales it down. Like literally scales it down in pixel wise, but it still apparently retains a lot of that like kilobytes here. So these are the questions I would ask some of the developers on a bigger website. Voila. All right, that was our guide to looking into images in order to improve page speed, core web vitals, etc. So I hope you learned something. Have a great day, and well, start working on that SEO.